Good morning, Pa. Time to continue where we left off. All right. And what's really cool about this book, I've noticed, is that it's helping me be a lot more aware of any time something is more temple themed. Like, I remember him discussing stuff on Ward Radio about, going through a 3-part space or talking about ascending. But it never really hit home about how prevalent certain sections, themes, and phrases are throughout the scriptures. And it makes me go, oh, okay, this is a lot more present than I would think. And a lot more of the terminology, really seeps through. And I can see and understand why this happens in many other regards. With other things. Like, in some ways, if you attend the temple regularly, there's certain phrases and vocabulary that just kind of slips into your mind all the time. And when you're talking regularly. And just because it helps you describe the world around you. And so it's kind of funny because I sit there and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why. Okay. And so that's probably why it's so prevalent throughout the scriptures. Anyways, so we're still on chapter 2. We were last talking about the antithesis to religious people is the secret combinations, that the oath that you do not swear by, the absolute worst, is the God, heaven, earth in your head, or in Matthew, heaven, earth, Jerusalem in your head. And whereas he was saying, if you really think about it, being initiated or going through the way of the Lord gets you in part of this group that is specifically promising to keep the commandments of God and do what is right. And so for the Book of Mormon, evil is a conspiracy, and so is good. We should conspire to do good. All right, and now it's turn to him the other also. Quote, ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn thou not away. Matthew 5, 38 through 42. Note here, as throughout Matthew 5, the statement of an old law, which will then be replaced with a new, higher commitment. I take this passage to another moral commitment, so the worshippers would have accepted it by saying yea or rejecting it with nay. Obviously, there are several images in this passage, and some or all of them were probably enacted as ritual gestures of instruction. Smiting worshippers on the cheek is an obvious candidate to be a ritual gesture. Our own experience leads us to think of sacred rituals as tranquil and sedate, but I think that can mislead us here. The transformation of an initiate into a new state of being is a huge undertaking, and trauma might be a necessary ingredient. A ritual blow on the cheek right here might be a token, or it might have been a serious buffeting. This adds an interesting nuance to our understanding of Jesus' judgment before Annas. Is it Ananias? Annas, A-N-N-A-S. Annas, where he is slapped, where his own intimate enemies are aware of his teachings and doctrines, mocking him by turning his ritual practices into physical attacks? Or consider this provocative message in Helaman, quote, And it was because of the pride of their hearts, and because of their exceeding riches, yea, it was because of their oppression to the poor, withholding their food from the hungry, and withholding their clothing from the naked, and smiting their humble brethren upon the cheek, making a mock of that which was sacred, denying the spirit of prophecy and of revelation, murdering, plundering, lying, stealing, committing adultery, rising up in great contentions, and deserting away into the land of Nephi among the Lamanites. That's Helaman 4:12, and he did add emphasis there. The sinners described here are the wicked among the church, and Mormon says it was due to their sins that the Lamanites and the Nephite dissenters were having military success against the Nephites. Notice the curious juxtaposition in the middle of the passage. Smiting their humble brethren upon the cheek, making a mock of that which was sacred. What sacred things were the wicked mocking? We're not told, unless smiting on the cheek was a sacred gesture. And in some case or cases, or in some perverse cultural craze, the proud and wealthy among the church were abusing the gesture. I think the real clincher is the treatment of Alma and Amulek by the people of Ammonihah. After the encounter with the adversary, their accuser Zeezrom, they are imprisoned, bound, and forced to watch their converts murdered by being cast into the fire. In addition, the chief judge of the land and his accomplices smite the two missionaries. He actually has more of a footnote here. Let me see where that's at. Oh, it's at the bottom of the page, so we're not to it yet. But his quote from the scriptures are, "Now it came to pass that when the bodies of those who had been cast into the fire were consumed, and also the records which were cast in with them, the chief judge of the land came and stood before Alma and Amulek, as they were bound, and he smote them with his hand upon their cheeks, and said unto them, After what ye have seen, will ye preach again unto this people, that they shall be cast into the lake of fire and brimstone?" Alma 14:14. This chief judge is a man of Ammonihah, an apostate city of Antiona, that once knew the course of the Lord, but has forgotten it. He expressly uses images and architecture of the course of the Lord. We'll see in chapter 6 that the lake of fire and brimstone is hell, and the wide gate of Matthew 7:13 to commit murder, taunting, tormenting Alma and Amulek with their own sacred things. He and his cronies then smite Alma and Amulek on their cheeks repeatedly in verses 14, 15, 17, 20, 24, and 25, making a mockery of this sacred gesture. Observe that the smiting is severe enough to knock Alma and Amulek to the ground, which makes me think that in the actual ordinance, worshippers were hit similarly hard. His footnote for this is, that's Alma 14:25. Consider also that Alma 14 says that the wicked of Ammonihah smote Alma and Amulek 7 times. Alma's use of the number 7 here may tell us that the initiates were smitten 7 times. In the alternative, perhaps Alma employs the number 7 here to suggest further abuse of sacred things. See chapter 10 for more discussion of the meaning of the number 7. In any case, the number 7 seems unlikely to be coincidental. Another potential gesture in connection with this commitment is removal of one's coat, really tunic or chiton, or a himation, and giving them to another person. Such an action would begin to prepare the worshiper for being ritually dressed later in the second room. This would have left the worshiper stripped down to pretty basic clothing, if only temporarily, or nothing at all. Okay, so he's going on to bless them that curse you kind of thing, because there's a few things in here that I've heard in their discussions, especially with David Butler. He goes D. John Butler on his author name here, which makes him sound like a wonderful mustard. D. John Mustard. Anyway, but David Butler is a really cool guy. He was a lawyer, and he studied Greek and Hebrew, and he was going back and forth on the train, and so he was reading all this stuff, and this is what, he'd been doing this for a long time. And anyways, but he's American, and he came back from England here and continued on his work. Anyway, some of the things that he discusses in his videos and in the conversations on Word Radio is this smiting section that he's talking about is probably a reason why Nephi goes, yeah, I was young, but I was large in stature. It was a nod to the idea that, yeah, most people are not cool with seriously smiting a 14-year-old boy going through temple rites, but, I was a big kid, I could take it, is what he alludes to. And so he's saying, during these warnings when we're saying, hey, Satan the accuser is coming up and doing these things, maybe if this was part of it, that they truly got beaten. And if that was the case and they were smitten 7 times, and it was probably hard and heavy enough to be pretty serious, that you got the idea that if someone abuses you like this, you accepted this and that you're willing to go through it. It's not some namby-pamby thing. And what's interesting is that on a totally different conversation, I think with one, what was it, Matthew Day, the other really scriptural guy that David Butler mentions, his take on this is that these are not only recommendations to be willing to take the abuse, and it's not just submit to all the terrible things of the world. He's basically saying, yes, what you're doing is you're not turning back to revile against them, but you're standing your ground. His take is that when you strike somebody, you usually strike them with the back of the hand and with your left hand, right? And that way it is hitting the other person's, it would be their left cheek, right? Because then you're not acknowledged, they're below you, and that's why you strike them with the back of your hand. They're below you. And if you turn your cheek, so you've been struck on the left hand, back of the hand, if you've been struck on the left cheek, right? So they can't do it again, you turn your other cheek, you give them your right hand cheek, and they can't hit the back of the hand with their left hand, your right cheek, really well, because you don't want to smash them in the front of the face. You're supposed to smack them on the face on the side of the cheek. But the idea is that they can't easily do that if you turn to them your right cheek, because then now they have to use their right hand, which means they're acknowledging you as an equal, or doing a regular slap. They either have to slap you with the front of their hand to get you, which again acknowledges you as a regular human being, or their right hand, which acknowledges you as a regular human being. So what you're doing, in essence, is not just taking it. You're not just meekly, oh well, I'll take it. I can take this as, it's actually doing a protest. It is basically saying, yeah, you hit me. I'm not going to hit back, but you're not going to do this again. You're not going to do this treating me as subhuman. I'm a regular human being. Same thing with if anyone sue thee at the law to take that coat, let them take that cloak also. This, Matthew Day guy, he basically says, yeah, well, you basically have 2 garments. You have your coat and your cloak. And so if he takes your coat, you take off all your clothes and you hand it to him. And it's like, yeah, you want my clothes? You think it's that important? Here, take everything. And here you are standing naked in front of everybody. So it's like, yeah, you can do that. You can take everything from me. But you're not going to do it again, because it's embarrassing for you and everyone around you. And what you're doing is wrong. It's one of these things where it's like, I'm not going to fight back. I'm not going to rub it in. But you're going to know, everyone around you is going to know that you're being a really big jerk kind of thing. And the same thing with whosoever compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. And the reason this is important is apparently it was Roman custom that you, as a conscript in the Roman army, you could press any person around you into your service, but only for 1 mile, because you don't want to, as conquerors, the Romans knew, you don't want to severely abuse those around you, because then they uprise against you. And so the rule was, sure, your Roman soldier says, dude, you're coming with me, you're carrying my pack for 1 mile. Go with him too. Not only does it show that you're willing to serve, but it also gets them in trouble, because now they've gone with you 2 miles. And so that Roman soldier is in trouble for abusing you. So his take on it is, not only are you not only are you being humble enough to take the pain and suffering that they're compelling upon you, and you are to take it well, but you are also to stand up for yourself, but in a nonviolent way. It's literally the nonviolent protesting way of doing things. That's his take on it, which is actually also really cool. If you fold that into this concept of, if the entire Sermon on the Mount is a temple kind of ordinance where you're going through, as Dave Butler calls it, the course of the Lord, and you have these ritual things like this ritual smiting and taking off your cloak and coat, you could be left naked or nearly naked if you only have your regular tunic and then your coat over it. Then you're ready to be ritually dressed, as he's talking about, right afterwards. And to give to him that ask thee, and from him who would borrow, turn thou not away. So it depends on how you want to read literally that specific section of, is it the humble taking of the world's pains and sufferings that occur to you? I agree. Is it also but also make sure that you stand up for what's right, and humbly but firmly don't take their crap. That's another interesting thought to it. So I'll leave it up to the person who's on the receiving end of these messages to take it to the Lord and figure out what is the best way to approach things, because it'll be different for each situation. Bless them that curse you. Quote, ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Matthew 5:43-47. We get a little information on staging here with respect to the Father. The Father is in heaven, which is apparently a place which the worshippers haven't yet reached. I read heaven here as being synonymous with the kingdom. In the context of understanding this ordinance, both refer to the Holy of Holies. This is actually the second time the Father is described as being in heaven, the first being in Matthew 5:16. We'll see the same in Matthew 5:48 and in the next chapter. Again, an old law, possibly associated with Moses, is stated so that Moses and the angel guide can supersede it with a higher law. We have a reference to the children of God. The worshippers are not yet the children of God, but they may become the children of God. Matthew 5:9 told us that the peacemakers would be called the children of God. So this moral instruction very consistently teaches us how to be peacemakers, love your enemies, etc. In Alma's day, the children of God seem to mean a subset of church members. Interesting. So it's specifically a subset of members of the church. And here's his quote for it of Alma 6, 5-6. Now, I would that all ye should understand that the word of God was liberal unto all, that none were deprived of the privilege of assembling themselves together to hear the word of God. Nevertheless, the children of God were, wink, wink, the children of God were commanded that they should gather themselves together oft, and join in fasting and mighty prayer, in behalf of the welfare of the souls of those who knew not God. Alma 6, 5-6. So he's saying that the people who've been through the course of the Lord and knew God, or knew the ordinance, would probably fast together and pray for those who haven't gone through the temple. Huh. Worship is public. Everyone is welcome. The children of God meet also in fasting and mighty prayer, and the word nevertheless suggests that the meeting of the children of God were not the same as the public meetings, and were not open to everyone. I take this section to represent a moral law also, a commitment that could be accepted by worshippers with yea, or rejected with nay. So bless them that curse you, and interesting, can you salute your others? Interesting. So fast and pray for your enemies. Interesting. And I wonder if this is why there was a big influence on the sons of Mosiah. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many points in the small plates of Nephi where they talk about they wanted to help the Lamanites, but they just really were not for it at all. Mosiah does his Mosiahan reforms after they've... So if Mosiah the first led everyone away after Aminadai saw the writing on the wall, and Mosiah the first left, and then established the kingdom, King Benjamin reigns. Then Mosiah the second, who is the father of the sons of Mosiah, reigns as, again, pointing towards keep these temple covenants. Then if the sons of Mosiah were part of this subgroup, the children of God, who really were fasting and praying often for those who despitefully used them, I think they took it to heart. Even as your Father. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. Matthew 5, 48. This verse looks daunting as it stands, but it is exhilarating when we learn to really read it. First of all, the verb translated here as be ye is aseste. It can be understood as a command, but its more usual translation is a future ye shall be. And you can see Bullinger's book and the information on be. As I'm writing this, I'm checking my Greek against the Abraham Publications online Interlinear New Testament, which is www.abrahampublications.com, Interlinear New Testament. Which quite straightforwardly in Matthew 5:48 translates asesti as you will be. So instead of be therefore perfect, it means should read you will be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Wow, that makes a difference. So you will be perfect. That's not nearly as intimidating as a commandment to be perfect. I find it positively encouraging. Yeah! In fact, it's also more consistent with our translation of the ordinance that Jesus delivers after his resurrection to the Nephites, where he tells them, I would that ye should be perfect. that there's a second thing we need to understand about this verse. The Greek word translated as perfect is teleoioi, a thing that is teleois. Oh, I really wish I could remember my Latin pronunciation better. Anyways, teleois has reached its end, term, or limit, hence complete, perfect, full, wanting nothing, with special reference to the end for which it was intended. The Abram Interlinear Online Edition translates the word as fully complete. Whew. To paraphrase, you will have fulfilled the measure of your creation, even as your Father in heaven has done. There is, that is a lot of digging deep. Like I say, this is like the deep math that you need, and you're like, wow, when it comes clear. So, be therefore perfect should be, you will be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Or to paraphrase, you will have fulfilled the measure of your creation, even as your Father in heaven has done. There is an element of promise in here and of foreshadowing, the end of the course of the Lord. This is the ordinance by which one becomes one of the shining ones, enters into the kingdom of heaven, and one fulfills the measure of one's creation, becoming like God. Sorry, I was thinking about how in the Old Testament temple, when they did washing anointings in the Old Testament temple, they seriously took a bath for washing, and they seriously took a bath in oil for anointing. I don't know about you, but that would be cold in the winter. Yeah, I guess they were used to cold baths too. We're all pampered with warm showers. So anyway, and the shining ones. What prompted that was the shining ones, because the being anointed with oil and such makes you shiny, and represents hopefully the actual transfiguration that you'd have of, if you were in the presence of God, like Moses, literally shining, or Abinadi before King Noah, how he was shining as he was connected with the divine spirit, quoting the Ten Commandments back to them because they didn't understand them, because they lost it. Anyway. Like I said, all these things he's referencing, just All right. Also, we have reached the end of the first room. Wow, all this is for the first room so far. Okay, let's keep going. The worshippers are about to be handed off to the second priest, who is seen to be Elijah, as we'll discuss in the next chapter. At this point, they experience a change in status, which is marked by receipt of a new name or title in Greek. The worshippers at this point join the ranks of the teleoi. Teleoi. God, I'm sounding more Polynesian than I am Latin. Yeesh. Teleoi. What might be the name of the new status in Hebrew? There are at least a couple of possibilities. So he's saying they get their name, they're among the teleoi, and what is the name of their new status? There's a couple of possibilities, but the one I favor is Shalem. Welch also makes the connection between the teleoi and Shalom. Welsh is the name of an author, and he's quoting his book. So he favors Shalem. Shalem relates to shalom, which is the Hebrew word for peace and health. A thing which is shalem is complete, safe, at peace, full, perfect, finished. He's getting that from the book which is done by Brown, which is called Shalem. I think that Nephi and Jesus, when they first underwent the experience of the course of the Lord, reached the end of the second room and were pronounced shalems. I will use the word shalem a lot, so I'm going to stop italicizing it from here forward, except when I'm referencing specifically to issues of Hebrew translation. In other words, the peaceable ones, or the perfected ones. Notice first of all that being pronounced shalem, i.e. peaceable, peaceable follows very naturally upon the instruction that the worshippers just received on how to be peacemakers. And so that's the funny thing is that about Matthew Dave's interpretation of, yeah, you're also standing up for yourself. It's like the focus is on being peaceable. And so, although I appreciate the fact that I guess in a world where it's eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, and that's their focus, that the idea, the kind of reciprocal throw back in their face what they're throwing at you kind of honor system is what they're living by. And so to suddenly be someone's throwing something at you and they're used to having the fight taken back to them, instead, you are taking it, but you are standing up for yourself, is still a huge difference. So, again, take it for what you mean, but being called blessed are the peacemakers. Shoot. God, the references. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the earth. Oh! Where is the one that... It's right at the beginning of the chapter, because it was about the Beatitudes. So, great is the word. Blessed are the poor in spirit, there's the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, they'll be comforted. Blessed are the meek, they'll inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness. Blessed are the merciful, they obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, they shall see God. Blessed are the pure in heart, the chaste. Oh, this is the preamble. All of this is not only, this is what you should prepare with, but this is saying that as you go through this, you will receive these things. This is the, oh my gosh. The whole blessed are the Beatitudes are, look at the steps. Blessed are the poor in spirit. So you're coming to supplicate with us. There's the kingdom of heaven, which is that symbolic area that you're trying to go to. Blessed are they that mourn, they'll be comforted. Everyone mourns. Lena, what do you need, dear? You are literally right in the middle of like a crux of something important.
I need to sharpen my pencil.
Oh, it's great. Jeez, kiddo, come on. Sharpen your pencil. You bring that back to me, and hurry. Jeez, kiddo. Anyway, blessed are the meek, they'll inherit the earth. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness. I think that's coming up again, because he was talking about the shewbread further on. Blessed are the merciful, they'll obtain mercy. So, he's talking about being peacemakers, the pure in heart, those who are chaste. Remember, again, in the instruction in the first room, you don't even look on a woman to lust after her. Blessed are the peacemakers, the people who turn the other cheek, etc., the section we just covered, and they're persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
There you go.
Thank you. All right. Now, lightly, don't shut the door all the way. Lightly shut the door. Thank you. Can she get it this time? Huh? Kind of. Sounds like it. All right. Nope. She closed it all the way. There you go. That's it. All right. Anyway. And bless, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven for so precious kid. So it's kind of like here's everything that you're going to be doing, and it's telling you the reward for going through these things. Because as you go through these things, this is all done symbolically, but it's also meant to be, as you face these challenges in your life, along these exact things, you are being rewarded for overcoming them. It's just, anyway. End of the first room, teleolai, Teleioi. He says they're the perfected ones or peaceable ones. The peaceable ones, the perfected ones. Notice the first of all that being pronounced Shalem, i.e. peaceable, follows very naturally upon the instruction of the worshippers just received how to be peacemakers. Second, consider Melchizedek. When we meet him in the book of Genesis, he administers a meal of bread and wine. We'll come back to that because it's very interesting. He's introduced as follows, quote, Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God, Genesis 14:18. The Hebrew words translated Melchizedek, king of Salem, are Melchizedek Melech Shalem. Shalem. I'll just call Shalem. That's much more Hebrew. With no change at all, these words can also be read Melchizedek, a Shalem king, i.e. Melchizedek the peaceable king, or Melchizedek king of the peaceable ones. Alma seems to know this meaning because he refers to Melchizedek with the following language, quote, Now this Melchizedek was a king over the land of Salem, and his people had waxed strong in iniquity and abomination. Yea, they had all gone astray. They were full of all manner of wickedness. But Melchizedek, having exercised mighty faith, and received the office of the high priesthood according to the holy order of God, did preach repentance unto his people. And behold, they did repent. And Melchizedek did establish peace in the land in his days. Therefore he was called the Prince of Peace, for he was the king of Salem, and he did reign under his father. That's Alma 13:17-18. Alma identifies Melchizedek as the king of Salem, but also the Prince of Peace, because he did establish peace. And Salem, meaning peace, is Jerusalem, means, I think, city of peace, if I remember right, or new city of peace. I'm not sure if it's new city of peace or just city of peace, but that's why whenever someone's talking about the new Jerusalem, that it's the new city of peace. Anyway, he did establish peace. I think this part of the ordinance, worshipers become the peaceable ones, or the perfect ones, and they move forward toward Melchizedek's peaceable land. Alma says that Melchizedek did establish peace. Abinadi at his trial tells us, quote, so this is Abinadi before King Noah, Behold, I say unto you, this is not all. For, oh, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that is the founder of peace, yea, even the Lord, who has redeemed his people. Yea, even the Lord, who has redeemed his people, yea, him who has granted salvation unto his people. For were it not for the redemption which he hath made for his people, which was prepared from the foundation of the world, I say unto you, were it not for this, all mankind must have perished. But behold, the bands of death shall be broken, and the Son reigneth, and hath power over the dead. Therefore he bringeth to pass the resurrection of the dead, and there cometh a resurrection, even a first resurrection, yea, even a resurrection to those that have been, and who are, and who shall be, even until the resurrection of Christ. For so shall he be called. That's Mosiah 15:18-21. So that means Abinadi was not only just referencing Jesus Christ, he was referencing Melchizedek, because Melchizedek was a very close type of Jesus Christ. You know how they use Moses as a type of Jesus Christ, and like how he raises up the serpent, and there's all these types and symbols of Christ in different prophets' lives. Well, Melchizedek was one of the foremost ones, and now I'm seeing why. Before I was just like, that's what the higher priesthood's named after him by, and he's just really, really cool. He did a good job. No. He literally, basically was a specific pattern to show how Jesus Christ will do that for everyone instead of just his people. Anyways, back to the book. I'm sorry, just again. The Lord, who is the Son and who shall be called Christ, is the founder of peace. Note also that Melchizedek did reign under his father, as does Christ. That's 1 Corinthians 15:24. Perhaps there can be more than one person who founded or established peace ruling under his father, and also perhaps the line between the Lord, the Son, Christ, and Melchizedek is not as clear as we have imagined. One indication that I was right in my guess that the underlying Hebrew here would be if the word peaceable showed up in the Book of Mormon or other restoration scripture in context showing connection to the mysteries or indicating that things that are peaceable are particularly sacred or require or require discretion. Let me point out 3 such passages to you. First is in the Doctrine and Covenants. This revelation received in 1831. That's early in the presence of 12 elders, because 1828 and 29 was when the translation of the Book of Mormon was happening. Wow, that is early. So, quote, "If thou shalt ask, thou shalt receive revelation upon revelation, knowledge upon knowledge, that thou mayest know the mysteries and peaceable things, that which bringeth joy, that which bringeth life eternal." Doctrine and Covenants 42:61. Peaceable things and mysteries go hand in hand, along with joy and obtaining life eternal. The second is in Moroni. Moroni gives us a sermon his father preached on the subject of the spiritual gifts of faith, hope, and charity. Remember that these gifts are also subject of Nephi's discourse in 2 Nephi 31:32, where we started. We're not done with faith, hope, and charity. Mormon is speaking in a synagogue, i.e. a public venue. Mormon 7:1, and he opens like this: "I would speak unto you that are of the church, that are the peaceable followers of Christ, and that have obtained a sufficient hope, by which ye can enter into the rest of the Lord, from this time henceforth until ye shall rest with him in heaven." Moroni 7:3. Oh, God. Mormon is talking in a context in which all kinds of people might be listening. He addresses himself to those in the audience who are the Shalem, followers of Christ, to those who have obtained the spiritual gift of hope, the spiritual gift of the second room, as discussed in chapter 8. Oh, wow. So that they can enter into the rest of the Lord. On the one hand, rest is a walk to talk about on one hand, rest is a way to talk about the third room, the Holy of Holies. And on the other hand, Mormon is also commenting on the spiritual states that are described by the ordinance. His listeners are specified as being in a synagogue, so they're not literally in either the Holy of Holies or in heaven, of which the Holy of Holies is the map. Nevertheless, they are in the rest of the Lord. Now, in a spiritual or psychological sense, as they will in the future be in the Lord's rest in heaven. The third passage is in ether, in order to have light in the barges with the Jaredites, which the Jaredites proposed across the Great Sea. The brother of Jared moltens out of a rock 16 stones and carries them up into a mountain. There he encounters the Lord himself, after a veil is removed. And we should remember that the mysteries that Nephi knows, climax in encountering the Lord. The fact that this encounter takes place on a mountain should make us immediately suspect that we're being shown a temple scene, as should the curious name of the place, which Moroni reports as follows. They call the Mount Shelem because of its exceeding height. Now, it's certainly possible that in Jaredite, or some language I do not know, Shelem means exceedingly high mountain. I think it's more likely that Moroni himself, an initiated man, notes the name on Esther's plates and passes it on to his readers. He expects that we will recognize the real meaning of the mountain's name, as he has. The brother of Jared carried his molten out of stones up the mountain to meet the Lord in Shelem land, or the mountain of the Shelems. Having been transformed into a new kind of being, elevated to a higher status, and gaining the name or title of Shelems, the worshippers move forward into the second room. That's the end of this chapter. Chapter 3 is Seek Ye First the Kingdom of God. Wow. Okay, so there is a QR code. There we go. Hopefully I've held that there long enough so that if you are using your phone to listen in on the conversations, you can. Wow. You know, a long time ago, well, not too long, but a long while ago, I always had an idea of it would be important to, I've always wanted to memorize the Sermon on the Mount. And it's mainly because of just all the instructional stuff. I mean, imagine having that literally right on hand. I'll need to look up how to memorize things like entire Shakespeare plays. I think a lot of people do it through repetition, through motions, through actions. Because I remember doing plays in high school, and I remember that, I felt like, how in the world am I ever going to memorize this entire thing? But after you do it 2-3 times, it's a 2-hour play, you get used to it because you're just memorizing your part and what you say and how you say it. But I sit there and think about a lot of Shakespeare. There are people who memorize entire Shakespeare plays, all the parts. And I guess in some ways it's not that much different from when people memorize their favorite movies. I just need to, there's a specific trick that you can learn to memorize things very quickly about telling stories with, so there was this reporter who was doing reporter stuff. He was making an article on people who were doing these rapid memorization techniques, because they would memorize a deck of cards in under 2 minutes and recite it. They would just basically shuffle a deck, look through the cards, and be able to recite what order the cards were in. And the memory trick that they use is that each card represents something in your mind, something very distinct, something that is, not ambiguous. For example, like the Queen of Hearts, you might say, is Taylor Swift, whereas the Queen of Clubs is maybe some other actress or thing that you associate with the Queen of Clubs. Maybe it was some Amazon, the Queen of the Amazons, because she has big clubs. She's the queen of the clubbing people or something. So you associate some outlandish, strong image to every single card. And then as they come through, you just build up a story in your mind really quick that's ridiculous. But because you're threading a story that's ridiculous, it's very memorable. And that way, as you're going through and you remember that, the Amazon Queen clubs the head of Taylor Swift, who then goes in a car down, and you use this memory trick, and it just becomes like you're reading a story as you're going through these cards. You can then retranslate it back in there. So he was watching this, and he was like, there's no way I could do this. And the person who won the tournament said, oh no, you absolutely can do this. And not only can you do this, I'll show you, and we'll get you good. Not only did the journalist learn to do that, he actually became like the next champion when they did the whole card shuffling memorization trick thing. So there are certain memory tricks that rely on how we actually learn and memorize things. And so I'm pretty sure there's probably something that you can do for memorization for entire sections of text. I just need to look it up because I think that would be way cool. Because, I mean, I think also it would make the Sermon on the Mount a lot more engaging to present it in a fashion similar to this. Like, not exactly, because I don't want to tread on the toes of, what's really there. But at the same time, it's like, how do you get kids and people who see this stuff to really appreciate it? Because as a kid, that was actually one of the really important, like, blessed are the peacemakers. Like, I always try to be kind of like, stay out of my siblings' fights as much as I can. And so I kind of latched onto the idea of being a peacemaker, or someone ascribed it to me. And so when I saw blessed are the peacemakers, for they are the children of God, that kind of thing, that really got me focusing and thinking about, hey, these scriptures are talking to me and to people, and I should take these seriously when I was a kid. And so it's like, how can you present these things to people before they, become adults and actually do go through the temple rites and rituals that will make these things stand out to them? Because like I said, before he's pointing all this stuff out to how this is very much in line with being a temple ceremony, I had no clue that the Sermon on the Mount was like a temple ceremony. I know he mentioned it, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And I didn't see how. Now that I'm actually going through his book, it's making my head explode, because it's like, holy crap, not only is he right, he's like really right. Because he's like pointing out the children of God, or the peaceable ones, and it's just like, but more importantly, like, even just the teachings of the sayings on their own, without the whole ritual behind it, is still magnificently important. I just want it to be more engaging. I'm wondering if, I don't know, I just have all these weird, funny ideas of, it's like, obviously, this version of a temple ceremony, you can understand its elements and how it has a lot more instruction to it because of the blessed are the peacemaker. Well, there's just, you see a lot of similarities of how things work together. And yet, the Sermon on the Mount is perfectly open to everyone. Since Dave Butler is talking about it, referencing the Garden of Eden, this Garden of Eden story is open to everyone. So it just, how do you get people to seriously pay attention to the instructions that Jesus Christ gives? How do you get people to sit there and really take on the idea that you should follow Jesus Christ? Because, and the other thing is not only were the people of Ammonihah using sacred things to persecute Alma and Amulek and throw the believers into a fire to burn them, and use that as, I'm taking your sacred temple rituals and using them to not only blaspheme them on an industrial level, but murder people with them. It shows that people will pervert the holy things to cause destruction and mayhem, but it also means that these patterns show up in real life. I mean, even at the times where, like in 3rd Nephi, it was Lehi and Nephi, those two prophets in 3rd Nephi were thrown into prison. They were smitten on the face and other things like that, and darkness was around them. And as David Butler mentions, that and Book of Mormon mentions, they were in prison, and then they were conversing with angels because the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and boom, there it was, and everyone was surrounded in darkness except one of the former Nephites, who basically looked up and said, "Oh yeah, I saw them conversing with angels." And so it's these patterns repeat. If you are truly becoming a peaceable follower of Christ, if you are going through the course of the Lord, if you are trying to do these things in this ritual, and it shows you, look, there's these patterns that happen in life that people will try and hurt and abuse you and sue you and do these things, that you do. This is how you respond. This is kind of like training you. It's really, really good. And it's funny because, if you think about it, that's really what rituals and progression type rituals are for. It's to train you. It's to train you to say not only here are the teachings, but here's the environment it's taught in. Here are the patterns and things that you will see, that you will encounter. Which also harkens back to a lot of the things that I can think of as going through the actual modern day temple. And the modern day thing is that I think there's a lot more that, even though it's extremely just bare bones, basic, punch you in the face, direct, but absolutely simplified instruction, it's so very telling that it's like that one line probably used to be a paragraph. And even if it's that one line, if you think about it, you can see how that would occur in life in all sorts of different sections. And so it's like, just take the stories that are in the scriptures, whether that's Garden of Eden stories in the different sections, or whether it's the Jesus Christ temptation stories or the Sermon on the Mount stories. It's just follow these patterns, even if they're not put in a temple type setting or ritual type setting, as he's showing that the Sermon on the Mount probably was. Even if it makes me wonder that, it makes me wonder if the Sermon on the Mount was, like we depict it as him coming and teaching this to everyone on top of a mountain. That's kind of like the paintings. He's sitting there and he's talking, and that everyone's around him, and that it's not this ritual type thing. Whereas if Jesus is actually trying to take people through this as like a ritual, it makes me wonder how many of them actually understood what they were doing. Or did he actually just sit there and teach as it's depicted on commonly, and anyone who knew about it being a ritual type thing understood it as that, whereas the people who heard it are like, wow, that's really cool, that's really great for me, and then left not knowing the further deeper meaning of it. So that's my musings. Wow. As always, just wow. And that was just the first room. He's got 3. And whoa. So that was just the porch where there's 2 pillars. Anyway, love you lots, Dad. Have fun.